Hello, welcome to Roll on the Adventure, the podcast where we create, play, and then take apart role-playing games. And it's going to be our dissection session of Frontiers of Time. With me, I have Nathan.
Hi.
Maggie.
Hey.
And Amy.
Nice to be here as always.
Cue the intro. Roll on.
Roll on.
Roll
the
on.
adventure.
Roll on the adventure.
Roll
On the adventure.
Roll on the adventure.
That
I
does
will
seem to
have
be
the
like.
last word.
Oh dear. That does seem to be the thing we always do.
I thought we got away without it for once. But
Nope. I like it. All right. So yeah, today's the dissection episode. So who wants to start?
Shall we go GMs first? What do you think worked out about the game? What do you think didn't?
Sure. Oh my gosh. I really like this game. This game effing slaps. As a GM, what I kind of ran into the most was we established when we wrote the game that we are very badass cowboys, and so rolling to do what would be mundane to us shouldn't happen particularly often. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. But when it came down into practice, there were certain instances where it'd be like, oh, it'd be really interesting if you failed. However, because of the way that your stats are, you just automatically succeed. And I'm like, oh. It also means that the players, even if you don't intend to, would make very safe choices, so you don't really have to roll. And then it's like, I don't know. Then why have the possibility of failure if you're going to play safe all the time and there's no way to make it more dangerous for you? I think the easy fix for that is just to, at minimum, have a glitch dice roll of 1, regardless of what your stats are. Which could tie into the fact that when we were kind of playing through the game, and I think it was codified in the rules, that getting a single glitch counted as a partial success, meaning that you will still definitely succeed more often than not, but it just means that the way that you succeed is a little bit more reckless or a bit more trouble causing, and I think that works.
Yeah, I definitely remember in my game there was a lot more of partial successes, because I tend to treat them as partial successes and just have something stupid happen. So yeah, I do agree. It might be better to have that just necessary. It must necessarily be 1 glitch dice.
Cool. Like I don't know. I personally wasn't a massive fan of it, but because it kind of felt like if I didn't come up with something that the GM thought, like I was kind of playing the GM, you know what I mean? Trying to come up with things I thought the GM would think were cool and a good idea, so I got less glitch dice. And I'm kind of burnt out on that as a mechanic, to be completely honest.
So what the question is, how do we set some sort of an objective scale for how much glitch dice? So would that be involved necessarily statting up every NPC like in another game, so it was an opposed check? Maybe.
Hell no, you can still eyeball it, but like the whole, for you it's X glitch die kind of rankled me a little.
Because yes, there was an instance in my run where, and it was a relatively innocuous example, but I think it demonstrates this quite well. Yeah, the theme park was also that noisy.
Sorry,
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Where Amy and David were in trying to enter in a dance competition, and Amy's character was reasonably experienced with dancing, but David's character was not. And so I'm kind of like, well, for somebody who isn't experienced in dancing at all, this is inherently going to be harder for you. And that was the only really way that you could kind of justify relative skills, because there were no real absolutes in terms of difficulty. Some RPGs have like a difficulty list thing of kind of like, if this is a task that would be doable in your sleep, the difficulty is 4 on a D20. And maybe that's what this game needs, but instead of it being kind of like mundane, it starts out daring and goes to impossible.
Yeah, that could probably provide a better guide for DMs.
Because if it's written down that, that the minimum difficulty is risky, then it already sets a standard for the players not playing safe. Although you might need to kind of have that in the rules. It's like, you as players, please be reckless, or this game's boring.
Yeah. I'm wondering, do we really want to add too much more to the game? Because it's already at 3 pages. How are we going to get that to... I'm wondering if there's some stuff we can compress.
Sure. That is a definite possibility.
Yeah, because it is a bit longer than it possibly needs to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because personally, I think the eyeballing worked out okay overall. It didn't lead to an interesting game experience. It just might be for if you wanted to do this longer term, or if you wanted to do more than a couple of games, maybe you'd want to have that as like a supplement.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of supplementary material for games. I've always stated in our past arcs that the ideal version of the game would have supplements. So maybe because this does seem like a 1-page thing, we could just have this table that just says all of these things, but not have as part of the main game.
Yeah.
So for instance, as opposed to having just a single document, which is all the rules, you could just have a single file, which is all the rules and supplements.
So you have almost like a player's guide kind of thing.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, like a GM's guide almost.
So I think it is something we can do, and I do think it is something that we maybe should do a bit more of. From my perspective, and I think it's something that Nathan has also noted as well, is the traitor. The idea of the traitor in the game.
It didn't work.
Yeah, the idea of the traitor is interesting. I must admit, it does provide a somewhat interesting turn because, who's the person we suspect? Because throughout because I didn't know who the traitor was, you gotta think. So throughout the entire bit of my session, I thought that Purple was the traitor.
Whereas he was just unenthused.
Yeah, and then at the very end, it was Nathan, and I was like, what? So I was genuinely surprised.
It's in a game because a lot of kind of like a hidden role games, there's a multiple things that you can hide. Like in Werewolf, when you're trying to do actions, everybody closes their eyes so nobody can see the person who does it. The way that this game works is unless I do stuff like DM messages to the GM, I can't do anything subterfuge without people noticing, which is why at the end of that session, when there was nobody in the scene physically around to stop me, it was the opportunity for me to actually be evil.
Yeah, when I'd already, killed myself for the greater good.
Yeah, I don't like that. I personally think Nathan did a really good job because you could look back and go, "Ooh, that he was setting up for this."
Yep, I am reasonably good at being evil in RPGs.
Yeah, it was. You did a good job of it, but someone could have just done nothing the entire time and then done the twist bit at the end and won on that, which I think would just be ridiculously unsatisfying.
Frustrating. Yeah, I agree.
That's fair.
For the rest of the players, and so I think we should get rid of it.
I personally think we should get rid of it too, because we did the first arc without having any traitor, because we forgot. And that was still incredibly fun, and you didn't have because most of the time when you have a traitor in a game, so a game like Werewolf, it's put there because it's it leads to an interesting mechanic of the game, because otherwise everyone would just there would be no point to the game. In a game like this, where the point is already to solve the problem, there's no reason to have the traitor, because it just adds an unnecessary element to a game that already has a point.
Yeah.
So I would agree to get rid of it.
Cool.
Bye, Jeff.
Bye, Jeff. So that's one thing. So what about Maggie? Is there anything you think that we could have changed about this game?
Well, I'm still obviously deeply in mourning for Jeff, but no. I wonder. So we came up basically. One problem we came up fairly early on is that putting your bullets in too far in advance, you might feel stuck. And in fairness, we did come up with the idea of spinning the wheel again. I wonder if maybe there could be an incentive for if you use your word in a way that's really creative and out the box, that might get people to think, oh, I've got stuck. What am I supposed to do with that? Ooh, if I use this in a really creative way, maybe you know what I mean? Like maybe not just give people ways to opt out, but give them an incentive to really think, ooh, if I do this in a way that no one's expecting, that will be good.
Okay, so
it just might get people to think more about their words rather than say, oh, this word's useless and not use it.
Well, the thing is, because a lot of the time so I can think of one or two occasions where words came up and they were basically considered useless. They were like, we wanted to get through them. I think there was one in the first arc where Purple, you had a bullet that was like huge or something. And you were just like, I wanted to shoot this at something because I want the bullet underneath it. Yeah. And then I believe it was also, again, you Purple in the second arc where you had a bullet you wanted to shoot, but you just had to shoot the other one.
Yeah, which meant I then had less ammo for the rest of the loot. I think that's fine.
I think that's okay.
BS, you can't just shoot the side to waste the bullet. But as far as the rules are concerned, you could. I was like, I guess, fine. And that I don't know, I didn't enjoy that.
Yeah,
that there's a way to kind of like cop out on the coolest mechanic in the game.
I mean, on the idea of, I like the idea that there's an incentive to using those bullets for something, maybe to cause yourself a complication, as opposed to just trying to waste them in a safe way. The most obvious mechanical way I can think to give someone an advantage for having done that and essentially, having caused themselves a problem, is giving them, I don't know, like one safety, and saying that in any roll where their glitch dice is more than 2, for example, you can get rid of one glitch dice to a minimum of 1. So it's always 1. You can never go down to 0. And that it would work like inspiration. You could only have one at a time. You could not have multiple. So I think that'd be a good way to encourage people to use the bullets that they don't want to use to give themselves or their teammates disadvantages to like add to the chaos of the game. What do you guys think about that kind of change?
I think that's cool. One of the things that was knocking around in my head was like in the instances where the uses of adjectives and stuff in the bullets felt like a stretch, but like a creative stretch. And it's like, that feels like something that would come up quite often. How can this be turned into a way that's either actively encouraged or discouraged because it's going to come up?
I mean, I genuinely thought that was the point, that we were supposed to stretch these.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's fair. So I think stretching it in a way that's really cool, being rewarded with an item to do that, I think is neat, because we've kind of variably used shooting as a stat as both a level of accuracy and a level of intent accuracy. And that's kind of cool. I like the idea of you firing the shot and it hits, but doesn't apply in the way that you intend if you roll badly.
I think that's kind of how I was imagining it.
But I think as a bonus for something really daring with an adjective use, even if it doesn't pan out in terms of your dice roll, if you still get a reward for trying the cool thing anyway, that still encourages people to keep trying to do cool stuff with their bullets rather than just always playing it safe. I guess the way that I envision this game is using the mechanics to encourage the players to do as many cool, reckless things as possible, which sets the tone in a very specific way. I do recognize that.
Yeah.
See, originally, like I say, I'm a little bit burnt out on over-the-top action games because I run a lot of con games. It's very easy for them to devolve into that.
Yeah. I think in terms of the tone, I'm personally, because the way we made the system, it can do both, depending on the DM. So, for example, like both mine and Nathan's games did have elements of mystery. So, mine was, both of ours were where's the problem coming from was the mystery. And then mine had more of an action bit to it, like how can you solve the problem because you know what it is now. Whereas Nathan's was how can you solve the problem, but there's more of a mystery to it because you don't know who's doing the problem.
Yeah, I was very literal, like Final Destination kind of instance, or Ghost Trick. If anybody has played that,
That's an awesome game.
No, sorry, I haven't played that. I'll have to look into it.
It's
Recommend
very
it.
it's a DS game, and I believe it's been ported to iOS, but Capcom is not very good about updating their games for modern iOS hardware.
Sorry, is that the one where a guy dies or is murdered and he's a ghost throughout the whole thing?
And you possess inanimate
got,
objects to stop other people from dying. It's very good.
And he's got sort of pointy blonde hair and I think a red suit.
You got it.
Does.
Oh yeah, no, I know that one.
But I think the tone. I don't think the tone needs to be clarified because we made a system where the flexibility, like it can't do absolutely everything, which is good, but it can be flexible in what it wants to be. I think it would suffer if we made it purely, it must be mystery or it must be action slinging. I like the idea that it's both.
I think it's inherently farcical, but that's the only tone I think you can't really get away from because you're shooting people with word bullets.
Yeah, I mean,
and you're to cause funny reactions.
I
think
totally play that completely, not ludicrous.
I mean, you'd have to have the buy-in in the bullet generation phase of when you start the session being like, okay, so because the way that we've done this in our 2 runs is that we generated the words and then the GM revealed the setting.
Yeah, I think that was a bad idea, personally.
Oh, so that might be something else to change. Have the setting revealed before
the word generation. And I would be okay with it being that way around. I'd personally if I was running this game, I would have that be optional depending on which way round, because there's a degree of surprising people. I think the opening that I gave wouldn't be as funny if the location was known in advance.
Yeah, I mean, you can always just give away, say, world tags, because world tags are a very good indicator of what you think is important.
True. Yeah, very true.
I think world tags would be, because I agree, I'd make an optional rule because having the surprise is partially important because, that one means you have to adapt to it a little bit because you've chosen these words, but you don't know where you're going to be. But I do like the idea that if you want to reveal, you don't have to reveal, exactly where you are. Like I didn't have to tell you you're on the moon. I could have just given you the world tag and you probably would have guessed you're on some kind of planet somewhere.
Yeah.
Also, maybe a compromise position. I mean, we're making it optional, so we probably don't need it. But a compromise position could be having people assign a certain number of their words, generate a certain number of their words before the reveal, and then allowing them maybe 1 or 2 post-reveal to let them take a couple of words that would make advantage. What do you think?
Good work.
Yeah.
No one did the create a bullet thing apart from me, so let's scrap that.
Yep.
No, that can be scrapped. I think this if this was a game designed to be done for longer play, then then adjective extraction is I think a thing that would come up more.
Playing it more tactically.
Also, it's kind of as a GM, it's my partial responsibility to remind of what mechanics are available to the players. And I just ended up not saying that is a thing that people can do because I think that is kind of cool about extracting bullets from the environment. But the game works without it, definitely.
Yeah, let's get rid of it. The save states. I think, to be honest, if we've got the save states, we don't really need the bullet extraction because bullets are less of a limited resource then.
Yeah, I would say so. I think the extraction can be useful in very limited ways, but at that point you might as well just not have it. Yeah.
Cool. So save states as a concept I personally didn't like.
Oh, okay.
We need some. I think we could have had another way of speeding through already done tasks.
I don't think so. I think I think both me and Nathan did have bits where you guys hadn't save stated in a while, so we essentially had to do like a fast forward kind of thing. But that was much more because us as DMs didn't want to have to play through those scenarios again. I think the save states just cut out that extra bit of awkwardness.
I kind of just feel that they're a bit too reliable.
So maybe maybe resetting a save state could introduce a random mutation. I mean, if we want to give it a proper fluff effects name, we call it the butterfly effects.
Well, that already mechanically happens.
Yeah.
Because whenever you are you saying that the moment you instill a save state that also deletes a tag? Because that could totally be a thing.
Yeah. I would say not deleting one. I would say adding an additional tag.
Yeah.
Or like
too many things, too many tags on the table.
Wait, hold on. So we currently start with 6, and then when we reset, one gets removed and another changes. I guess if you save state, one isn't removed, but one of the tags changes. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that would be better than just removing tags, because otherwise that defeats the point of having a save state.
Yeah.
Which is to make success more likely.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where you're coming from, Purple, considering we want this game, part of this conceit is to be a bit chaotic, and having save states kind of makes that less so. But I think for mechanically, you do need some aspect of reliability, because otherwise, for example, if you were doing a longer term version of this game, so like maybe Majora's Mask 3-day type thing, not having those save states could actually make it a lot more frustrating for a player. So I'm thinking from the player perspective, having no save states is important.
I don't think we need save states. I think there's a better way of doing it, but I don't know exactly how that's done yet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I can understand if there was some other framework we could have for speeding through stuff, but apart from just fast forwarding, which is essentially the same as save states, just with more words.
I think it's importantly different, and it also means that if you're using bullets and things like that, that means that bullets are still a quite a scarce resource. Whereas with save states, it's like we've got an hour left and 6 bullets again.
I mean, okay, so I was thinking a little bit about other tabletop RPGs that do something similar, or if any of you are listeners to the Adventure Zone podcast when they were doing their Dungeons and Dragons campaign, one of the arcs was, funnily enough, a Wild West town that was trapped in a time bubble and was having its kind of last hour happen over and over again.
Yeah, the 11th hour.
Yep. And they run through that scenario quite a few times. And Griffin, the GM, does an attempt to kind of remember the specific things they did and in what order. And then after a couple of iterations, those things were just done because it became tedious to, but they still technically had the hour to do things in.
Yeah.
And it became very, very flexible about how exactly long that hour was and how long stuff took. And it almost felt like, really they were having, save states of stuff that completed already being done. But without having to narratively, they feel very similar in terms of what it actually means for the story.
There were minor little things they could have done, but that was more because Griffin himself couldn't really remember, and I don't expect any DM to remember every single minute difference someone does on every different iteration. The save states, as much as it works for players, also works for the DM.
My final kind of thought about that is the difference between full resets and save states is that in a save state, you can make a decision that is suboptimal and save that.
Yeah.
And then that matters.
Yeah, I get that. That's cool.
Cool.
But I kind of feel that there's probably a better sort of middle ground. But
there might be one, but
I'm not quite sure where it is. So I think we should definitely just go with save states.
That's fair. Okay, so moving on to one of the major mechanics of the game, which I think we sometimes got a bit confused about, rootin' tootin'.
Yeah, we need to redo that because it the way people played it and the way it was written were completely different, and it meant that I had no idea what my character could do.
My bad.
To be honest, and I originally when I pitched it, it was the sort of thinky bit and the doingy bit as 2 separate skills. Think if you've ever played 319 Carnage Among the Stars, combatability and non-combatability are literally the 2 stats.
Yeah, I always thought the way I always thought of it was physical, social.
And I thought of them as quiet action and loud action.
And I like quiet and loud personally. I think that's the way we should probably do it.
Yeah, because removing the curtain a little bit for our listeners, there's a little document here of all the thoughts for revision we have. And you put here rooting is thinking, tooting is doing, whereas I was pretty sure it was tooting was, that's the reason I thought it was social, because tooting, to me evokes images of talking, speaking. Rooting literally evokes images of, shifting through stuff and doing that kind of stuff. So I thought that's the reason I had that, physical, social divide.
I mean, if it's about detective work, knowledge, or quiet action, then it'll be rooting. If it's about attention grabbing or bold action, it's probably tooting. That is literally how it's set out in the game document.
Yeah. That's fair. Maybe I got the words switched around because we're not actually going by the words' technical definitions anyway, in some senses.
To kind of go over that, if people missed or don't remember how our first episode went, rooting was, as suggested, kind of investigative and searching and like following tracks and things like that. Cowboy BS. And tooting is quite literally assisting your allies, and that is all that says. And that we were kind of like, okay, so does that mean that tooting is specifically a teamwork role? But that didn't really work super well. So we're kind of lent in more into the literal definition of like to toot, to make a noise. And so I kind of read them that way as being quiet and loud actions, because to talk about the previous point about detective stories and how if there was a single role for detective work, well, to my mind, there is like the Sherlock Holmes, very careful and quiet and picking up pieces of pottery and looking at them. And then there's like the Jessica Jones busting through a glass window, pinning a thug to a door and yelling at them about where the clues are. And those feel like separate roles to me, even if they are detective work.
I think they are. I think the second is tooting. It's in that case, the detective work is effectively the intent. It's the end rather than the method.
True.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, so if we're re-clarifying what these mean then, so rooting would be quiet action?
I mean, it's literally, that's how it is already. It's just we did it.
How we interpreted it on the day. Yeah.
I think that needs fixing.
Maybe examples given to it, because I think it's fine for it to be interpreted differently by different DMs, because in every game where you have something that needs to be rolled, it's interpreted differently by different DMs.
Yeah, this is a unique issue with a 2-stat system. If any of you have played Hack the Planet by Grant Howitt, or my own one-page RPG, Agents of Hue, available on sixofspades.itch.io. In Hack the Planet, you have 2 stats, meat space and cyberspace. And that's relatively obvious about what you would roll things for. But when I was playing that, there was a thing where somebody wanted to convince somebody of something, and it was in real life and not on the internet. So I'm like, I guess meat space. Because that's the only logical thing of the two it could be. In Agents of Hue, the 2 stats are fierce and fabulous, which is very nebulous as to what those 2 things could feasibly be. But that's also kind of the point.
Okay. So just really giving examples could help, but I think just allowing the fact there will be, maybe if the DM at the start sort of go, because there always is communication with players, just sort of does put out there what their interpretation of it might be, because then if nothing else, the other players could be like, that seems a bit limiting, can we change it? Admittedly, like I didn't think of that, because literally as far as I was concerned it was mental social. But that is something to maybe make more explicit in the rules.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with, it's just down to interpretation, is that as a player, you need to know what your character is capable of. And I felt that I didn't, because I didn't know I had almost no idea the way a thing was going to come down.
That's true.
And that was incredibly frustrating at times.
Yeah, maybe I'm not sure if the original document kind of has examples of rooting and tooting, but maybe providing like maybe 2 examples of each, just to make sure someone knows how broad that can be, because these are very broad actions. Their methods, not their methods, not ends.
Their approaches,
I find that in explaining how very nebulous or vague stats work in short form is having the name of the stat. So it'd be like rooting, act with X, Y, or Z, which are different like adjectives. So rooting would be like acting with care, quietness, and craftiness, for example. Craftiness might not be the third thing, but giving the example of the intellect. And because if it was like mental and social, then if I want to go and punch a guy, what stat do I roll?
I would call that rooting, to be honest.
Oh, interesting. I would have called that tooting. But yes, having those kind of like act with X, Y, or Z, I think is usually a good way to give a couple of different examples without writing out full sentences of the instance. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that. Okay. So that seems to be something I want to change about that.
Dope.
Cool.
Okay, Maggie, is there anything you want to address?
No, I think I've got all my points out.
Okay. The next one here is team cohesion.
Yeah, we fractured really badly, and part of it is because it's an online game. It's harder to sort of read people. It's harder to, I personally find it a lot harder to get what people are doing.
Yeah.
In an online game, and that makes it harder to work together. And there was kind of little incentive to work together, which I think is bad.
I think that might have folded in so slightly into the idea of the Scorpion / Jeff, where it is not in my best interest to talk to you about what I want to do.
Yeah.
I think in the first game it wasn't so bad because at least there was a reason why we split up, as in I went to do one thing, you went to do another, we were covering our bases.
It was to cover more ground,
so, and we sort of met up at the end anyway, so that was fine. It was worse in the second game, where I sort of think in retrospect we were sort of, even not just Nathan and us, but none of us were really on doing the team thing. We were all sort of separate for that.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't, maybe as a DM, my scenario didn't encourage that kind of thing, because there wasn't the events you guys were meant to get to, the pod going around the Earth, which is about around the moon, which is about to explode. Unless everyone decided to get up there, which eventually, most everyone did. But there was no easy, simple way for me to do that without simply giving you a way to do it, in which case it would have kind of prevented the issue of that scenario. Whereas in the first one, I do agree, splitting up isn't bad, as much as it's sort of not a thing you really, it's a joke people make of games, don't split the party. It is a thing you can genuinely do, especially in the first one where, I was the one who talked to the guy to get us into the dance competition. Purple was the one that walked into the saloon and saw that sort of stuff and got that information.
Yeah.
And Maggie went to the
security guard.
Yeah, and you went to the security guard.
A tiny security guard and put her in your pocket, and that was great.
That was brilliant.
That was awesome. But so I think some of the ideas put down here was a briefing, bonds, and borrow a tag. So would you like to go through some of those ideas, Purple?
Okay, so just letting people interact in the briefing is, I don't know, often you kind of have that bit where people get to know each other before you actually do the thing.
True.
I don't know if it's really that great on this. Bonds as in you bond yourself with another character, you have something on your sheet that says me and X works together,
Yeah.
I think Victor and I went on a mission, or someone saved my life once, or and I got dragged out of a time avalanche by Maggie's character.
Time avalanche. That's amazing.
I won't lie, it sounds a bit like a salad.
I like that.
And what's this about borrow tag?
Well, it's when you give someone advice, they get to borrow your tag. So I was when you were Mysterious Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
So someone else could, if they're following your advice, you're working with them, they can borrow your say you were bad at routing, right?
I think I was bad at root. No, I think I was bad at tooting. I was bad at talking to people.
So if you're bad at tooting, and someone else is really good at it, but also being mysterious would be really helpful. If you give them advice and help, then they can borrow your mysterious adjective to make it easier to do the mysterious sneaky bit.
Right. What do you guys think of that?
Finding a way to kind of mechanically incorporate those might be a cool idea.
I think we just need to reward planning and teamwork, because I think we didn't enough.
Yeah, the only concern I have with borrow a tag, and feel free to shoot this down, is earlier today we literally mentioned the idea that some mechanics become too reliable because they give you an advantage where otherwise you'd have to think creatively around those scenarios. And I think the idea of borrow a tag kind of has the potential to fall into that problem, because depending on the DM and the players, you could essentially have, borrow a tag is always a thing, and in which case, you have the bullet I want and I have the bullet you want. But it just makes it a bit too reliable in that way. It does reward the teamwork, and that's great. But I think that sort of goes against the spirit of what this game is about.
Interesting.
Well, you've gone for 1 die minimum glitch dice anyway.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But having both of those things together would kind of it would be too much. You would have either one or the other, and I think having the the safety, does kind of, it is a bit of a more central thing than having the borrow tag. On the other hand, I do believe the bonds, that's a very good idea. Part of the thing we were constrained by in this arc was, we are a short form audio podcast. So we didn't really have the ability to do character stuff too much. I tried to, I think, do some in the first one where, I can't remember her name, bless me, but she had connections to your character. I was trying to bring those out. We've been on missions before, and my thing was always to do the stupid thing. I think in a longer form game, you would have those bonds, and that would be important.
Yeah, but if there's no mechanical weight to them, people just forget.
Is everyone else here familiar with Roll20?
Yes.
We might think of using that in future games to mitigate some of the. Or would that be doing too much that the listeners couldn't see?
No, I don't think so.
The Adventure Zone, I can't remember the surname, the subtitle for it, but the Monster of the Week thing that they currently do apparently is in Roll20.
Amnesty.
Yeah, that apparently is being run in Roll20, and you don't really notice or miss it. It's just useful for them being able to bookkeep.
Yeah, I think that's fine, because as long as there's stuff they don't need to see, then that's fine. I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah. Also, a point to kind of raise about teamwork in RPGs and it being sometimes mechanically better. I will always root for that as a game design decision.
Yeah.
Especially even because usually the drawback to that is both people giving up their action to force something likely to succeed.
You're paying in action economy, effectively.
And this game very specifically, because time moves on as people do things. Two people giving up their turn to investigate something, to do something together, I think feels valid.
Yeah. That's fair. One thing, again, feel free to shoot this idea down. We limit the amount of times borrow a tag can be done in a single mission.
I think that's just overcomplicating things.
Yeah.
Like it's another thing. It's yet another thing to track.
That's fair.
I mean, like, I've let this tag to X person. I've let this tag to X person. People will just forget.
Yeah, I think more than anything else, this team up system with borrowing tags will also encourage people to make tags for their players that are useful. And if they happen to be too specifically useful, then killing them off is always an option to get a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine to try borrow a tag. It seems a mechanic that can be abused, but most mechanics can be abused at certain points. So I think it's good to have it and have that mechanical benefit.
Yeah, I think what you gain in team cohesion is worth it.
That's perfectly fair. I must admit, I really did like the first one where I was playing, because I actually felt rather bad when my character died, because it's just like, oh dear, because I really liked her.
That is exactly what I wanted out of that. I feel a little bad of forcing the first loop to be fatal, but also you guys. I guess the way that I rendered the event happening wouldn't necessarily kill any of you, but you all decided to get me involved in the thing, and I was like, yes, good.
Yeah.
Put your necks on the chopping block for me.
All right.
It did work quite well.
Nathan, is there anything you'd like to bring up?
Is there anything else super important that I want to bring up? We've already kind of covered like glitch dice stuff and about the accuracy of the shot working with both the accuracy and the intent.
Yeah.
I think we're good. Really? Oh, that this is a mystery game, I think is still true. And actually, not that many mystery games, not many games out there that are built to be mysteries that are also built to be actiony.
Yeah, the only one I can think of, and I might be wrong, is Fiasco.
Yeah, and that's technically not a mystery game.
No,
technically.
You're not uncovering something, you're creating. I think that it's dressed up as a mystery game, but it isn't.
No,
which is great. I really like it. But
Fiasco
it's a different thing. Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the puzzle dungeon that I did at UK Games Expo. That wasn't actually a puzzle dungeon. It was a creative brainstorming session dressed up as a puzzle dungeon.
I see.
Fiendish. Yeah, I really did like the mystery element of this game, because mystery is one of the hardest things to do as a DM. Is one of the hardest things to do in tabletop. But the way we did it took away a lot of the you need to know exactly what's going on out of this. It took there was some elements of you had to be intelligent to connect the dots together, but at the same time you have the ability to just run into it.
Yeah,
like we had the ability to just run into that dance competition and get hit by the roller coaster. And really, apart from causing more instability in the world, which is the point of the game, in a way.
Yeah, you didn't lose too much from... I like now the phrase face tanking the mystery. Face
tanking the mystery, which is different, because that's a fun way to do a mystery and takes away a lot of that stress. So I do agree that this game is a very good mystery style.
Yeah, I enjoy face tanking the mystery. I do it in other games as well.
Yeah, that's all good.
So yeah, let's see.
Okay, the 3 failures thing. My main worry with that is that the partial success after didn't work with the Scorpion, but we've got rid of the Scorpion.
Yeah.
It looks like we are effectively going to need basically a back page, which is just all the optional rules. Things like randomly rolling the world tags. Things like if you're wanting a short game, 3 failures. Basically, the customization points.
Yeah.
I think we should break them out into a completely separate document.
I would say, just have the supplement.
It's just called Frontiers of Time, the supplement.
I like the idea of calling it something like thematically relevant, but I can't think of anything currently besides like dime novel.
Frontiers of Time, Another Dimension.
Or Frontiers of Time, Most Wanted.
That would more speak to me of like NPCs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of having the back page, because that, someone could completely ignore that if they wanted to, but it would also be like a quick ref document. To an already very, very small number of pages. Like DMs, if you can't read 3 pages of stuff, why are you DMing? But yes, I do like the idea. So some of the things I thought were really cool, and some people also thought were really cool. The typewriter, which basically ended up just somehow ending up in the setting, was a really cool thing that just appeared in every setting.
I wouldn't want to force that in terms of rules, but I like that there's a special run-through thing that we have. That feels very dear. I like that.
Yeah. No, I do like it. It has a bit of like cohesion, weirdly enough. Like it makes you, because otherwise you could completely think that these time police are essentially from, any dimension. There's no connections between the two. But having the typewriter makes them feel that they are from always the same organization.
Yeah. But that was the thing that we invented on the fly in my run. I don't think that was.
Yeah, that was my idea. I was very insistent that not only was it a typewriter, but the reason I wanted it to be a typewriter was because it stood out. I mean, not always, but that idea that it was, no matter how ill-fitting it was for the setting, it needed to be a typewriter. And in fact, the more ill-fitting, the better, because it was, I think, it gives them a consistent identity, but it's nice to have the one way they don't stand out to help sort of provide a foil for all the ways they don't.
Yeah, the typewriter in space. Yeah, that was a fun thing to describe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just one really positive thing that came out of the actual plays that should be noted, was that was a really cool element, and maybe not to put as an optional rule.
I'd put it in the telegrams bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's in the optional rules section, even though it's not really an optional rule.
That's fair.
I think just adding it to core rules would bloat what we've got. We need to get it as tight as possible.
I'd agree. Okay, so noted here is stuff about bullet effects, which is obviously very important to how this game works. What are we considering, like, stretching? Because a lot of the time, so the one I can think of is duplicitous.
I mean, that was a random roll though, so we didn't. That wasn't thought through, right?
No, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure duplicitous was a word that was already in there.
Yeah, but it wasn't like one of the ones that someone chose to use. It was Nathan going ham with the Time Bandit gun.
That's true, but either way, the point still stands of what stretching it means, because depending on the scenario, I as the DM took it different ways. Like one time was creating two clones. The other time was causing someone that had been turned good to turn bad again.
Yeah.
And that was great. I think that is one of the instances where having very wild interpretations of the bullets that we've written is working as intended. That felt fine to me. I didn't have an issue with that.
I personally was like, it is very much it's like a sort of niche kind of offbeat definition, definitely, but it worked. So
yeah.
I think wait until people start putting gerunds into your time gun.
Oh no.
You shoot bottle at somebody, and either you trap them inside a giant bottle, or they take a wine bottle and beat somebody over the head with it, and both are accurate.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I mean, that I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Right. In optional rules, Time Bandit guns, like in the first game, they were like there was a roll, then there was a decision of what to do with the bullet, and then there was a shoot. In the second, that wasn't the case. It was point and shoot something random. I really don't like the second as a mechanic.
I can see why.
It makes sense because Nathan was the scorpion.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for anything because it gave him plausible deniability about effects.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in an act, like as a rule, I don't think it's a great one. Personally.
Well, I think a lot of the time, part of me thinks that in most scenarios that don't involve that exact set of what you guys did with actually allying with one of the Time Bandits. It wouldn't be a thing. You'd never get the gun. But it just happened to be in that specific scenario, you did get a gun, and there was no way for me to not give you the gun, except just saying that the gun doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I felt that was a bit like something I couldn't say.
Yeah.
So I do like the idea of roll, decide, shoot. As a DM, that would be what I would do.
Yeah.
But as in that specific scenario where it was the player who was using it, I had to roll randomly.
I don't know. I personally was going for that you never really meet the time rustlers, but that went out the window when we actually get up more.
I just like having Team Rocket goofy villains in my stuff.
No. I agree with the decision. It's just like I was thinking, we're just not going to see them, but then I was thinking a lot more mystery game.
Yeah, I think I do agree because, a lot of the problems should come from the environment, which is true. But there's only so much you can do with problems coming purely from the environment without having an enemy, like a physical enemy to fight. So I think having what Nathan did, having what I did, just did work.
Let's reword the stuff about the time rustlers not really showing up.
Yeah. I think it's nice that they're a shadowy force, but I like the fact they do have agents. I also did like the fact, it seems they have a bit of a miraculous ladybug thing going on, in a sense, with, the domino masks, and, when they turn good, the domino masks disappear.
That was very good. That was very, very good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so anything else people want to talk about? Good, bad, or horrendously average?
I just really like this game, man. This game's super cool.
Yeah,
I must admit, this is probably my favourite one I've been involved in.
I'm trying to work out how to get it down to, ideally, I would like to get this down to a page.
I'll do some copy editing later. I'll do my best to get it to size.
We've got that. We've also got, if we do break stuff out onto, a optional second page, effectively.
I mean, if this is a quote-unquote 2-pager where it's Frontiers of Time and then Frontiers of Time 2, Back to the Path, Future Perfect, I don't know, where the back page has all the kind of side rule stuff on it, I think that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we might have to sort of break the one-page rule in a way, because otherwise you're going to cut out bits of this game that are important and make it fun.
Yeah. I mean, just explaining the timepieces and the world tags is chunky.
Yeah. No, I see it.
I don't want to completely lose the flavor text either.
Oh, yeah. I think just cutting it so it's, tight is good, but cutting it down to a specific number of pages kind of can limit creativity. I think that's, the reason the reason I think we have one page is because, it encourages someone to do less is more.
Yeah.
But in this case, because we've already got what the core of what we want, it just so happens that is more than what we usually put down.
Yeah.
So, yep.
I think we've covered pretty much everything that was on my sort of hit list.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah. You have something here that's not game specific. I'm presuming that's is this something we want to talk about?
Nah, that's just more podcast stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Apart from the same page tool bit, I am a big fan of it, and I think we should use it. It's a thing that you can sort of pass around your group to make sure everyone's expecting the same sort of game.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
And I think we should probably link this in the video description and such.
Yep.
Because it is really useful. It's kind of working out some options. It isn't like a use this to sort of meet in the middle thing. This is laying out what the game is. You know what I mean? It's asking questions you might not otherwise, which is kind of nice. Anyway, I think we're pretty much done with the Frontiers of Time revision stuff. So, shall we take a break?
Yep. We'll be back in the next part to, I believe we're going to do our usual, go over some gaming news.
I don't know about news, just what we've been up to.
Well, okay, yeah. Talking about gaming in general, and then putting down our ideas for the next arc of On the Adventure. Nice. We'll see you guys in a bit.
Bye. Bye.